So last weekend I had to see somebody in the hospital and they had a problem with their lungs. So I was trying to understand the actual medical situation. And they explained it to me and I'm like, all right, explain it again. And then I realized I really don't know how lungs work all that well. If you pressed me to write a diagram on a blackboard, you'd probably draw a stick figure with a couple lemon wedges in the middle of the chest. I don't know. There's the things, they contract, inflate, deflate, and there's some different tubes in there, some different types of tubes and things, and various ventricles or something, I don't know, valves and springs or whatever. And the air goes in there and oxygen somehow transfers to the blood, because we need that for our body for some reason. I really don't understand lungs very well, although I've been breathing all my life. I don't understand how it's working, and I don't understand a lot of things. This causes me to just sit there in my chair, and I've been reflecting like, I hardly understand anything about my body. I don't know. I put some scrambled eggs in it. I try to rest it, comb my hair. I just really, most of these systems and everything, they just kind of function and I take it for granted. My fingernails keep getting longer and I go get my hair cut once in a while. So it's just interesting how little we know about our bodies, even if we have some expertise and we're a medical doctor in some special part of the body or some system of the body. Like it's so big that you can't study the whole thing. A lot of times you have to have specialists for each part of the blasted thing. It's so complicated. We can't make one. Yeah, we can clone people, and we've done things with genetics, and we can grow cells in a petri dish that we need or stuff like that. Growing something doesn't count. That's not creating something. That's not taking the raw materials, from scratch. It's easy to grow something. You just plant some seeds in the ground and sprinkle them, and that's about all we do. God can construct one of us from nothing. We can't even make one cell. Each cell is a whole entire galaxy. The more we learn about a cell, the complexity of one little cell. So I just want to bring us down to size this weekend. Zacchaeus is a short man, a man of short stature. He climbs that tree to see God. And his pitiableness, his littleness, I just had a good time this week reflecting on these readings and bringing us all down to size, because we're so impressed with ourselves. But we hear in that first reading from the book of Wisdom this incredible, profound contrast between God and us. For the Lord, the whole universe is as a grain from a balance, or a drop of morning dew. The awesomeness of God, it's like one of my favorite things to think about compared to us. And just cut us down to size. We're so impressed. So impressed. We went to the moon, celebrated 50 years anniversary that we went to the moon. Now, it is a remarkable achievement, and I read books this summer. I watched every documentary. I was totally into it. Fascinating thing we did. When you realize, it would take 4 years going the speed of light to get to the next star. The next closest heavenly body outside our solar system. We're not going to suddenly start visiting the stars unless we can figure out how to go the speed of light. And then it's still going to take years just to get to the next one. Centauri, Taurus, or whatever it is, Taurus. Point is, Star Trek, Star Wars, we like to fantasize, but this thing is huge, this universe of ours. And what we did in going to the moon is equivalent to me in my rubber raft. If you saw that video from the Holy Land trip I made, and I went out in the Sea of Galilee in a kid's raft. Anybody see that? In Chuck Taylor Converse. Go to my YouTube channel. fr.larryyoung, and watch it because it's only a couple minutes long. And I think people are pretty entertained by it. I had the audacity to go out there in this rough Sea of Galilee with a plastic little paddle. The dang near almost broke, and I barely made it back in after I cut the video off. People don't realize that. I got swept all the way down to the Mount of Beatitudes. I barely made it. So anyway, ill-advised little trip in a rubber dinghy I bought at the supermarket in Magdala, where St. Mary Magdalene's from. So anyway, now that would be like me taking that to the beach and like making it out past the breakers, you know? Just picture I somehow survive each set of waves. I ride up and over in my little dinghy, and then I get past the last one, and I'm like cheering out there, waving my arms and my paddle to everybody. I did it. I made it. That's kind of like us going to the moon. It's an awesome achievement and everything, but okay, we made it outside our atmosphere and 4 days into space and did this cool thing, landed on the moon. I love it. It's like one of my most favorite things to think about, that we did that is an incredible thing. But in the grand equation of things, from God's perspective, he's up there looking down at us like, okay, it's kind of neat. Made it to this little rock floating around our planet. In the grand equation of things, when you pan out to the whole thing, to the whole ocean, and picture me in that little dinghy, all excited because I made it past the breakers. And you think of the immensity of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's just almost laughable. That doesn't even do justice to how big our universe is in comparison. That analogy limps big time. Awesome. The whole universe is nothing compared to God. It's like a drop of dew. He can step over it. He's infinitely greater than all of his works. I love thinking about it. I love talking about it. Zacchaeus, a short little guy, so pitiable. He represents all of us. Climbing up that tree to see Jesus, the Word of God, who knows everything, the incarnate wisdom, the Logos, the divine Logos, who spoke creation into existence by his all-powerful Word. That's who's walking down the road and looks up at him. Unrestricted knowing powers of the Word of God, knows everything there is to know for all time, all at once without a struggle, and even everything that's possible that doesn't exist, but that's even possible, he knows, all at once without a struggle, everything that there is to know. Unrestricted knowing powers. I love thinking about God's omniscience. The immensity of God, immensus in Latin, means immeasurable. He's the only one ultimately we can really use that word for in the strict sense. He is immense. We have to humble ourselves if we're going to meet the Lord, if we're going to know God. And I feel like this first reading was really powerful this week. This description of God who holds us in being. How could a thing remain unless you willed it, or be preserved had it not been called forth by you? In him we live and move and have our being, St. Paul says. And we use that in the preface of the Mass today. This doctor, this chemist, I heard her testimony. She was an atheist, and it was on TV on the show The Journey Home. It's on EWTN, and very full of herself, representative of modern atheists, scientists. Scientism, where science has all the answers. We don't need anything else. Just empirical, hard science is all we need to figure out and solve all our problems. That was kind of her philosophy. She was enamored with it. Just absolutely ravished her mind when she went and studied it. She got a doctorate in chemistry and was working for DuPont, doing amazing things in this lab. She had a whole team of researchers under her in this state-of-the-art lab, and all they were trying to do was imitate photosynthesis in the lab. They were trying to replicate one tiny aspect of photosynthesis in the lab. And they had smoke coming out of their ears trying to do it. And she was just running up against our limitations, with her letters after her name and her impressive credentials, and so proud of herself. She's put in charge of this whole research team to do something that was so impossibly hard. Just one tiny little aspect of nature. So she sat back in her chair and she had this watershed moment. She looked out the window and saw a ginkgo tree right outside the window, and one of the leaves just kind of flapping in the breeze, naturally doing photosynthesis. Whatever the heck that is, I don't know. Drawing its energy from the sun. That's about all I can really say. So it's doing it naturally without any struggle, just sitting there, and she's just like, here she is, like this avowed atheist, just impressed by God. There's a divine chemist out there who's doing this. How is this happening? Where did this order come from in the universe, this symmetry, this elegance of this fine-tuned universe, these systems, organic systems, performing these functions? How in the world? It took 15 more years for her to convert fully. She became a devout Catholic. Now she writes books. She's written a couple books on science and Christianity, and one with connecting the Catholic faith and science called Particles of Faith. Her name's Stacy something or other. She's a exciting person to look into if you like science and faith. Particles of Faith. Anyway, this was my thinking this week. I'm sharing with you because I just feel like Zacchaeus is so pitiable up in that tree, and he represents all of us and our limitations and littleness, and we have to get really little and small and humble when we come into the presence of this immense God that is absolutely vital to enabling us to pray rightly and to worship correctly.